All right. Excuse me. All right. So one of the ways that if we're going to define and try to define personality, the question, of course, is how do we do that? And the one thing, just to remind you, is that the humanistic theorists would say that in order to discern human personality, we need to do it through interviews and conversations. In this case, not conservation, but conversation, in a trait-like approach, we basically, the trait theorists would say, well, we can actually ask a series of questions that would help discern the kind of traits someone might have in a cascading series of true and false questions. And so what that has led then to, in terms of assessing personality, is something we refer to as personality inventories. And there are a variety of these on the market. The granddaddy of them all, if you want to put it that way, would be the one that we refer to as the Mmpi. It's now in its second version, so we have the Mmpi 2. Mmpi just simply stands for Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. And it's really quite memorable, because if you take it, you without a shadow of a doubt will know that you've taken it, because it has some 670 items. It's a massive test. It takes way over 2 hours to complete. And essentially, in this case, the Mmpi is looking at abnormal personality traits and identifies a series of scales that helps us to understand the nature of someone's distress or disorder. And so like I said, it has 10 scales. It has one on anxiety, another one on introversion, extroversion. We have one on schizophrenia. We have another one on depression. Those are just few examples of that. And essentially, the Mmpi really defined the science of assessment as far as human personality is concerned, and it derived, it did what we refer to as empirically derived the items that it would use from a massive pool, maybe 15,000 different items that they would have people take. And what happens is you begin to see a pattern with certain kinds of people taking each of these items. And so we began to divide them up into scales, and we could actually identify people according to how they actually scored. It's an objective scoring system. Each of those items are true and false. The person is not providing us with a story of any sort. It is just simply a matter of scoring the test and finding out what it comes up with. So essentially, that's part of it. Now, the downside of this, and what I want to look at, are some of the strengths and weaknesses that are part of testing itself. And one strength, which is not, these aren't necessarily explicitly mentioned in your book, but one strength really is the efficiency. In other words, I can have somebody take a test like this and get a quick snapshot of their personality and the issues that they are dealing with. So in that sense, it's quick, it's efficient, it helps me to get a head start on the issues. The downside of it, the weakness of it, is that it also, we lose a lot of data about the person when we reduce them down to a set of numbers, and that's a good key weakness in that. The other element in there is the ability, the other weakness, if you want to put it in here, is the idea that it's based on self-report. So as we'll see when we start talking about the self in a minute, is that if I'm reporting on myself, how accurate will I be? Because automatically built in is something that we refer to as the self-bias. In other words, I might say, I might answer a question because I know what the reasons are for that, but they're not captured essentially in a true and false question. Either it's true or false, how I mention it. So a lot of times what people often feel when they take these tests is, wait a minute, it can't be reduced to a true or false. There's a reason for why I do what I do, and that's just kind of the way it goes, really. I mean, there's not much to be done. A fourth strength here is that because tests like the MMPI have been so widely researched, I spelled strength wrong. It is of very good diagnostic value. It helps me to get a grasp, a very quick grasp, on the nature of the issues that, and I'll put these, this is a weakness, lose a lot of data is a weakness, and the efficiency is a strength. And the diagnostic value and understanding the nature of the person's issues are really quite important. And they're part of the strengths and weaknesses of any kind of assessment that goes into it. So what oftentimes you find when psychologists go about assessing an individual, we do what's called a battery of tests, which means that I might do something like an intelligence test, so I can see how well the person or what level of intelligence they're operating from. I might do something called a projective test, so I'll show them, and you're very familiar, no doubt, with the Rorschach. Well, the Rorschach, the Inkblot test, is a projective test. The person has to make sense of the inkblot that they're given, and by giving the story helps me to get a look on the inside of what's going on. And then finally we use an objective test of some sort, which the MMPI is a good example of that reduces it down to a little bit easier way of understanding.